Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno, here to talk spring training. Matt is just returning from Arizona. Myself and Blake Williams will be on the ground in Phoenix tomorrow, so lots to get to there. We've got a Roki Sasaki update, a Shohei Ohtani update, an interesting conversation about the back end of the Dodgers rotation, as well as some health updates. But Matt, let's start with the pressing piece. You spent the last 5 or 6 days in Camelback Ranch. Tell us how it was and what you learned.
It was good. I think my biggest takeaways are, and I may have shared some of this last week, are first that, and I'm generalizing here, but people in Arizona do not drive very well. And second, the Dodgers being swept by the Cubs, I would imagine put a pretty big chip on their shoulder to get some revenge at the start of the season here next month with the Tokyo series. But hey, I mean, in all seriousness, like I said last week, I am like half serious about people in Arizona. Like, the driving out there is crazy. So you and Blake, please stay safe. But in terms of, the real answer to this is there's a lot of excitement with the Dodgers and also a lot of different sort of questions kind of bubbling under the surface that, not that are cause for concern, and we're going to get into some of them tonight, but just some interesting potential storylines that I don't know if we would have anticipated kind of to the naked eye when you're looking at, the Dodgers are signing Blake Snell, they're signing Tanner Scott, they re-signed Teoscar Hernandez, Blake Treinen, and all that. Like, there's still, at least early on, there's some question marks that need to be answered.
Yeah. It's such an intriguing. I mean, there's young guys, Zahir Hope, who's been hitting well. Alex Freeland gets his first hit today. We've talked about, look, the spring training stuff and how much we put stock into these performances, but it's almost overwhelming, the number of storylines going on. It's Ohtani coming back. It's Roki Sasaki debuting. It's all these different elements sort of coming together at one place. And it's just like, there's too many things. I'm sitting here on a Sunday thinking, I don't know how much we're going to be able to talk about. And I'm like, we've got injury updates on Evan Phillips. We've got Snell and Glasnow updates, Sasaki facing hitters, Ohtani facing pitchers like Ha-seong Kim. Where's he going to play defensively? Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, all these pieces at once. And so it is a little bit of a whirlwind, it seems, from the outside. Like, do you feel that there? Like, there's all these, it's almost everywhere you look, there's an interesting storyline, I feel like.
Yes, I think from the sense of, when they're going through the morning is very routine. It's, you get there early, the clubhouse is open, you kind of talk to some players who are passing in and out. Dave Roberts then will have a scrum with the media, and then the workout starts, and there's live batting practice, there's bullpen sessions, there's all these things. And like you said, like, you feel like, okay, Shohei Ohtani is throwing his bullpen session today, I'm going to kind of focus on that. But then you look at the sheet of the different activity, what the breakdown of what players are doing, and it's, on that other field, Blake Snell is actually facing batters today, and it's like, oh, well, I also want to see that. So there's certainly a ton going on. I see Aubrey asking if we can talk about Dustin May. Like, yes, Dustin May threw a bullpen one of the days that I was there, and obviously then made his first start today, Sunday, if you're watching this live with us. So we'll get into plenty of Dustin May. But yeah, there is a lot going on, and there's also a lot of media interest, which we, got our first taste of last year with Shohei Ohtani coming in, just kind of the spotlight that he put on a franchise that already was drawing plenty of attention. And I feel like that has sort of increased even more this year with Roki Sasaki and Ha-seong Kim joining the team.
Yeah, I'm with you on all fronts there. And you of course were there for the Roki Sasaki is married announcement as well. I mean, it just, you're there for the big news there, Matt.
Yeah, we're all sitting in the media workroom waiting for the clubhouse to open, and he posts that. I would say maybe 20, 30-ish minutes before the workout was going to begin. And, teammates didn't know about it. Dave Roberts didn't know about it when we got a chance to ask him. And that video is up on our YouTube channel. He had a great reaction. He sort of joked that Roki is he'll get his wedding gift after Dave gets a chance to meet his wife.
Yeah, and I got to meet her first. We got to make sure it's a real person, Roki, before we start sending some nice things your way.
Yeah, so that was funny to hear. But yeah, I mean, it's becoming a Dodger tradition. 2 years in a row now, we've had a player announce on Instagram, surprisingly, that they have gotten married.
Yeah. And I just loved like the reaction from guys. Like somebody caught Dave in the middle of an interview and broke the news to him. He's like, what? Like Ohtani didn't know, Yamamoto didn't know. These guys are all recruiting him to Los Angeles, and somehow he keeps that whole thing under wraps. So I guess kudos to Roki Sasaki for his ability to keep that under wraps. So let's get into some of these updates, some of the things that are actually happening on the field, because again, you're going to have some great insight there as to what it was like and what you heard and what you saw. And as we've mentioned a couple times, Blake and I will be in Arizona starting tomorrow. So Tuesday, you'll start getting some more content from us down there, some player interviews from the clubhouse, that kind of a thing. So we're looking forward to that. But let's talk about Dustin May. Dustin May was one of the names that was just brought up, and he threw a bullpen. He got into a game. I think it was Fabian Ardaya who pointed out it's been 648 days since the last time he appeared in a major league game, which is insane. 648 days. You don't have to be a math major there to figure out that's really dang close to 2 full years. And yet he's out there throwing 94, 95. Here's some nerd stats for you, Matt, that I know you'll love this. Pitching Ninja was tweeting about it. The best breaking ball in Major League Baseball last year from a spin rate perspective was Seth Lugo's curveball. It averaged about 3,300 RPMs. Dustin May threw 2 pitches at 3,500 RPMs. In spring training, in his first appearance in one of those games. It's a reminder that he's nasty. And yet, Matt, I think the underlying thing, the thing I took away from his quotes was this: I'm alive. I'm glad I'm here. I think there's been jokes kind of made about the esophagus and salad and all of this. But I listen to this and I'm like, this guy literally believes he almost died. So the joking stuff, like from the outside, I understand how people get there. But this is a guy who is pitching as if he almost didn't get this chance.
Yeah, and I know that you didn't meet there is Dustin May believes he is fortunate to be alive for a reason, and that is because doctors basically told him as much when they rushed him into emergency surgery. And I know, like you said last year, when the news came out that he had esophagus surgery, everybody was wondering what. I had never heard of something like that.
Yeah,
we were confused. There weren't a lot of answers. And then now that he's been in spring training and he's discussed a little bit more, then, he mentioned choking on salad basically. And that unfortunately led to more laughs than understanding what was going on. And to Dustin's credit, he has been very forthcoming about the situation. And I think that that's important and good. We try to remind people that as much as, these athletes are great in a lot of different aspects, they're still humans at the end of the day. And
yeah.
And normal things that unfortunately could happen to you and I are also, it can happen to them. And to hear him, sort of recount that night and what he experienced and his recovery. And I think it's also important to remember what he pointed out too, was last year, that situation happened as he was on the verge. He was getting ready to start his rehab assignment. And he had already been through, 2 elbow surgeries. So the challenges, the adversity had already been stacked against him. He's overcoming that, and then he's hit with something that is, much more serious and life-threatening, and I'm sure also frustrating because it's another issue that's keeping him off the field. And so you saw today when he pitched, there was some emotion from him. He was excited to obviously get the strikeout, and he kind of embraced that and acknowledged it. And like you said, his quote is, he's basically happy that he's alive and able to be pitching for the Dodgers again. I know that he was asked if there was anything that would have kept him from pursuing a return. And he basically said if he was dead, that was the only thing that was going to keep him from pursuing his return in spring and obviously, this season. And so it's a little bit of a gut punch. It's I don't want to call it jarring, but it's important, I think, like I said, to remember that these guys are human also.
Yeah, totally. And again, I think it's reading the quotes and it's like, oh yeah, okay. Regardless of what I think, I wasn't there. It wasn't my experience, but he's pitching with an appreciation and a joy of just being alive. His quote was not oh man, 95 felt good, RPMs, et cetera, et cetera. It was, I'm alive. I'm glad I'm here. And so, for some guys, maybe that's something that's liberating to him. And maybe that's gives him a positive view and an outlook on those types of things. And so I'm excited for him. And again, there's no doubting what he's capable of if he's healthy. Literally the only question that has ever been a question with Dustin May is, can he stay healthy? And it's not his fault. that he hasn't been able to. He's had some freak stuff. He had to have the elbow surgery twice without ever pitching, and then he has the esophagus thing. And so there's been bad luck. We can just hope as Dodger fans that there's good Dodger fans that there is good luck sort of around the corner for this guy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if anybody, has gone through some challenges and would deserve some good fortune, it's certainly Dustin May. And about his velocity, I know Carlos was asking us over on Twitter about it. Like, Dustin, you mentioned 94, 95. Like, and Dustin May said he's fine with where it's at right now. He anticipates that it'll increase, and it's normal for every pitcher. Like, nobody comes out of the gate. Very few pitchers, I should say, come out of the gate throwing the velocity that they will end up being at their peak. He did also say that if it doesn't come back, then for whatever reason, like, fine, like, he'll make it work still. And I think that that's an important factor to have. I think I get why fans are swept up in, pitchers that can consistently throw 100 miles an hour, but Dave Roberts and other and current players will be the first to tell you that it's not just a matter of how fast you can throw a pitch. You also need to have movements and all the other nerd stuff that you guys like to cite on these shows that I have to sit through all the time.
Did you say you did need movement and the nerd stuff?
So movement and nerd stuff are different.
Okay.
Pitches,
just
like,
it
can't, your fastball, if it's 100 mile, it can't be straight because it'll get timed up. It needs to have some movement on it, which is different than the nerd stuff you and Blake and everybody likes to mention on these shows. Daniel a little bit, Scott, which by the way, I know Scott let everybody know that he is unfortunately for us stepping away to pursue other opportunities. We're happy for him that he's doing that. We can kind of discuss that more, but I did see some comments about it. No, certainly no bad blood there. Nothing Scott did, nothing we did. It's a decision he's choosing to make. But anyway, back to Dustin May. Yes, like, the velocity, it is what it is right now. He's fine. It should continue to trend up as he pitches more.
Yeah, totally. And just for the record, I texted Scott the other day and just said, hey, man, kudos to people that can go and chase their dreams and chase the things that they want to do. He's been super supportive of his girlfriend as she's navigated sort of getting herself where she needs to be. And so now he's gotten the opportunity to do some stuff. And so, Scott announced on Tuesday that he's going to be leaving the end of the month. And it's bad news for us, as I posted as a comment to that video, but we're happy for Scott. And as he said, there's you might see him around here still, just not as regularly as maybe it has been. So let's connect. Actually, let's do this. We got a super chat here from Fernando. Fernando says, will Zahir Hope make it to the majors this season? Hope, depending on where you look, is either the Dodgers' top prospect or no worse than top 3. Baseball Prospectus, who we had on here, they've got him as like the number 8 prospect in all of Major League Baseball. As a guy who, last season basically got as high as A-ball. That's the highest he has been. And yet, so far in spring training, Matt, you were down there. This is a guy who has looked the part. He's had 8 at-bats. He's got 2 hits. One of them's a home run. The other one's a double. He's got 3 RBIs and a walk as well. For a guy who's never played above A-ball, an impressive performance. That said, I would be shocked if he makes the major leagues this year. To go from single A one year to the majors the next is, I'm not going to say it's never been done, but it would be highly surprising. So I don't think he makes it. But what was your perception being there, seeing him in person? He's kind of a unique body type, freak athlete by all accounts. Give me your impression of Zahir Hope.
Yeah, and on top of the offensive stuff he's been doing, especially of late, these past 2 games, I think it is maybe 3 games in a row. He also made a couple catches in left field last week, and he was starting in right field on Sunday. And Dave Roberts has praised him a lot, and Zahir Hope is impressive. You see kind of why he matches the eye test. The eye test checks out with the prospect rankings that he's getting from these different publications. Okay, I agree. I agree with you. The likelihood of making his MLB debut this year is not high. It's not. I wouldn't bet on something like that. But stranger things have happened. I mean, if this is a sign of kind of what's to come this season, he is at least going to end up in AAA by the middle of the year. I mean, it'll be quick. Like, they might choose him. He may begin, I guess, at AA, so he won't necessarily skip it per se. But if he is back at high A for whatever reason, he may very well skip AA if he's doing well enough. And, you get to AAA, like, anything can kind of happen, but I still don't see it as likely. Yeah,
I think he's just got a couple guys ahead of him in the pecking order, if you will. Keep in mind the Dodgers also have a 40-man roster logjam, so guys that they don't need to add right away, they probably won't unless it's sort of in an emergency situation. And so unless they really think, hey, this is the guy who's going to help us and we need him to help us long term, I think he's just got some obstacles that he's going to overcome. Crazier things have happened. It's the Dodgers. Guys get hurt. But we appreciate the super chat there. And again, Zahir Hope, I think, has been one of the fun things to watch. We talked Dustin May. Let's talk Tony Gonsolin as well, because Gonsolin and May are always connected. I've got a piece of art behind me on this side that's Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin and Will Smith, guys that sort of came up together. And it's fun to watch these two guys because they are so dramatically different. Like, Dustin May is tantalizing with just how nasty he is at times, and yet hasn't been able to stay healthy, hasn't necessarily been overwhelmingly effective at times, versus Tony Gonsolin, who in many people's eyes doesn't pass the eye test because it doesn't look super sexy, it doesn't look super pretty, and yet continues to be very, very good just about every time he is healthy and pitching. Dave Roberts had an interesting quote about Tony Gonsolin, saying, quote, "We just can't forget how good Tony has been for us when he is healthy. So I'm certainly not sleeping on Tony. I think he's going to be good for us." Gonsolin, couple nasty strikeouts in his spring debut. Where are you at on Gonsolin? And not to say we don't need to do is he better than Dustin May? Is he going to get the spot in the rotation? But just Gonsolin in a vacuum, where are you at with this guy?
I mean, you and I have agreed that he's probably going to be the fifth starter. I do agree with you. Like, he does sort of fly under the radar because, velocity doesn't jump out. Like, there aren't a lot of things that stick out. I think he's capable of being a quality pitcher for the Dodgers. I think his struggles very much were tied to being injured.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Dave Roberts said that he's not sleeping on Gonsolin. We spoke to Gonsolin after he came out of his first start. He said he does feel a little bit like the forgotten guy on the staff after watching the Dodgers sign Blake Snell, Roki Sasaki, and all these things. But he also said, look, like, he's just going out there and kind of focused on competing and doing what he can, which is a good mindset to have for, a young player. Like, the Dodgers roster is certainly loaded. That being said, there is an opportunity for him, at least right now at the outset, that he can capitalize on.
Yeah, I've done this before. I'm a Tony Gonsolin defender because I think at some point you just need to look at a guy's results. And, basically up until the 2023 season, heading into 2023, he had made 51 starts at the major league level and thrown 272 innings. That's not like a 40-game sample size that you can just write off and say, well, he was good for 8 or 9 starts. Across that stretch, he had an ERA of 2.51. 2.51, not 3.51, not 3.81, 2.51. And the expected sort of fielding independent pitching, expected ERA numbers beneath it were all very, very good. Maybe not 2.51 good, but like his expected ERA, 4 straight seasons under 3.85 on that. So he is expected to be a solid to very good pitcher. He made an all-star team heading into that season. And then in 2023, and then he hurts his elbow. And as Fabian Ardaya kind of hinted at in an article he had on Gonsolin that was really good a couple of days ago, like, he pitched with a busted elbow for 8 straight weeks. And then he's like, finally gets it looked at, ends up having surgery. In 2023, his first 9 starts, he had a 1.9 ERA. His last 11 starts, he had a 7.5 ERA. And so I'm not saying Gonsolin is going to wow you. I'm not saying Tony Gonsolin is going to be like the next Blake Snell or something like that. I'm just saying this is a guy that has been, I think somebody said, like, sort of steady Eddie type. Like, he's just reliable. He's consistent. I think he's like a better version of Landon Knack. Those are guys I've compared before. He's Landon Knack with just more starts and experience under his belt. And so, to Dave's point, we can't forget how good Tony has been. I'm not sleeping on him. I think there are people that are sleeping on him. And if he gets a spot to be the number 5 starter, I don't necessarily think he's going to be a guy that's going to be super easy to pull out of that spot a month and a half down the road when Ohtani and Kershaw. Now, they might have to, but I don't think it's going to be like, oh, we can't wait for these guys to get back. I think it's going to be like, well, now what?
Yeah. And I think here, there's this comment. Let me throw it up really quick. Jay hits the nail on the head. I think he says Gonsolin was an all-star, but for whatever reason, he just doesn't feel like a guy that I want to hand the ball to in the playoffs, but you can't deny how effective he has been.
Yeah.
That's similar to how I feel. Like, I would agree with a lot of that. Like, I would be worried a little bit if Tony Gonsolin is having a start. in the playoffs for this team. I think some of that too is because we know the depth ahead of him. So I would question like, well, what happened to all these other guys? But I do think that is somewhat of a factor. When we have seen him in the playoffs, he has struggled. Now, I will also add the caveat, because I have expressed this in the past, that I don't think the Dodgers really did Gonsolin any favors with kind of yo-yoing him and Dustin May for that matter. They were both young, trying to get established at the major league level, and they're being asked to start games, then they're being asked to open, then they're being asked to pitch out of the bullpen. Ironically, Mark Pryor did say today that Tony Gonsolin's next time pitching in spring training is going to be in a piggyback scenario, so he will be out of the bullpen. I think the explanation there, and it makes sense, is that the Dodgers are obviously on a condensed schedule because of leaving to Tokyo. And so just with rest for guys and things like that, like certain days line up.
Yeah.
And you can't, you don't have 2 Cactus League games that day, then you have to figure out what you do. So I think it is a little bit of the environment and not necessarily a precursor of what's to come for Gonsolin's role.
Roger wants Matt Moreno, I think more than anybody else, to know that Tony Gonsolin just wins 34-11, 756 win percentage. That's your favorite stat right there. So what do you have to say for yourself? You don't trust this guy in the playoffs, Matt?
No, well, I mean, that's not his playoff winning percentage. So it further validates what I said, that yes, during the regular season, great. Like he can be, like, as you mentioned, somebody called him a steady Eddie type guy, somebody you can count on. Hopefully he had been healthy until his elbow issue. So yeah, I mean, I think he's also about, he's going to be coming up on free agency soon. So there's not necessarily the significant team control aspect, but he has been under team control, and what the Dodgers have received in terms of production has been great from a player at that point in his career.
Totally agree. And we'll see how this thing plays out for Tony Gonsolin. But I think at the very least, it's positive news for the Dodgers to see him improving, to see him pitching well. And the last note that we've kind of mentioned, multiple people on our show has mentioned, it helps that he was about to be ready to come back. He could have come back at the very end of last season. So we're not talking about a guy who he's been out for 2 years and he's slowly building himself back up. We're talking about a guy who's ready to go, full spring, full off season, full winter, ready to go. And so I think that's good news for Tony Gonsolin. How it shakes out with him and Dustin May remains to be seen. Let's get to a super chat. Laura, as some people joked, Laura's poking the bear here. But what's your impression of Ha-seong Kim? I don't think she's poking the bear, but people who know my thoughts on Ha-seong Kim and how they've been framed may find this a comical question. So I'm going to just pass this to you, Matt. You were there. He's made his debut, got his first hit today, an infield single he beats out, which speed is, part of his calling card. So what's been your impression so far?
It's been a little bit of what's to be expected, I think. Nothing, he's not necessarily
she says offense and defense, by the way.
Yeah. He hasn't necessarily been great. Like, as you mentioned, his first hit did come today. It was an infield single, which, look, credits it. It's a line drive in the box score. He is getting on base for the lineup. So a hit's a hit. I've been impressed defensively with how much they've moved him around, and that he is, sort of handled that pretty well so far. Today, he made a running catch in center field, which, if you saw Andy Pages late last week, center field, there's still some people
are saying, Matt, some people are saying that maybe we shouldn't just pencil him in as the starting center fielder.
There's still maybe something to figure out there. So I think, it's interesting that the Dodgers are moving Kim around as much as they are and kind of plan to this spring. That wasn't something that I anticipated. I know that they are working on some mechanical stuff with his swing. And so I think that is I'm sure that it is playing a factor in terms of the lack of production, if you will, if that's the lack of results, if that's how you want to put it. But again, the Dodgers, perhaps more than any other organization, are not worried about looking at spring training stats and needing to see a 300 batting average and whatever on base percentage and all that stuff. If they feel that a player is making progress with his swing, with the adjustments they have in place, and maybe he's, hitting into loud outs or just whatever the case may be, they will buy into that aspect. And so they're not going to be overly concerned. It will be interesting to see, how the dust all settles with the opening day roster because of center field, because of Kim having options, because of Chris Taylor and all the different things. Kike Hernandez obviously being back. But I think Kim's been fine so far. It's a really small sample size. I'm basing a lot of it off of what I've gotten to see on the backfields during workouts. And like I said, what struck out most to me is how he's handled kind of moving around in different positions and how frequently the Dodgers have been doing that.
Yeah, I was slightly surprised that they were giving him as many reps in center field as they were, and that they kind of were saying, hey, this is something. So it's going to be second base, it's going to be shortstop, and it's going to be center field. Obviously, the center field thing makes sense. I mean, this wouldn't be the first time a team just looked at a guy who has a certain athletic profile and said, let's see if you can go play this position. It's kind of how they ended up with Cody Bellinger in center field. It's also how they ended up with Gavin Lux in center field. One of those worked, one of those did not. And so that piece, I'm with you. I haven't gotten to see in person the defensive stuff. I think somebody said there was an error at one point. But again, like, I want to emphasize, I don't care about this stuff this early in spring training. Even Yamamoto, like he talked about, and lots have been made of how hard the first spring was for Yamamoto because there was so much on his plate, and how much more excited they are for year 2 because he's just streamlined, he's dialed in. Like Ha-seong Kim's going through the same thing right now. And so I think this is a guy who's working through a change in league, a change in country, a change in language, like 100 different things here. And so I'm not paying attention to the results, I guess, is the short part. And I would say too, I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and say like, oh, it doesn't count as an infield hit. Like if your game is speed, you get credit for the things that you do then when you run something out. So you're not going to hear me bashing like the hit that he had, because I think that's his game and that's an advantage. It's not luck, but it is what it is. I see the question here. I think most of us are asking, does KBO translate to MLB offensively? Do we want to do this again? Like, are you just trying to bait me into pissing off half the chat, Matt? What are we doing here?
It was just a question that I think people are asking. And Hawaiian Kira believes that Kim will shatter that mindset that you and some others have of KBO players struggling in their first year.
Look, I hope Kira is right. I want nothing but the best for Ha-seong Kim. And the Dodgers will be better off, especially if he's a lefty who can play center field and second base and shortstop and be kind of the heir apparent to Chris Taylor as sort of the super utility guy that plays all over the place. That would be best case scenario. All I have tried to do. What's that?
Is that not Kike Hernandez?
Or Kike Hernandez? However, they've got both those guys on the roster. So Kike feels more like less of a, I don't know. We won't do this, but Kike's better. How about that? I just am trying to warn people, not because I'm down on him. I just don't want unfair expectations placed on Ha-seong Kim. Because I've seen this play out where if he comes up and he does what I think he might do based on history, I think there's going to be people that are crapping all over him in 3 or 4 months. And that's not going to be fair. And I'm just saying, be patient. Like, this guy is probably going to struggle mightily in year 1. He's starting from a lower spot than the other guys who have come over. And those guys dropped precipitously once they came over. So, like, 12 months from now, let's just take a deep breath and say, okay, year 2, let's see what we have. That's all I'm saying, Matt.
And if Kim does not struggle this year, Jeff will have a Ha-seong Kim Rookie of the Year bobblehead, courtesy of our good friends at FOCO.
Look, I hope I'm wrong. Anytime I predict that a guy isn't going to be awesome, I hope I'm wrong about it. And this is one of them. So there you go. And yes, Ha-seong Kim is the pronunciation, as Devin is saying in the chat. Okay, let's get to some other stuff. Roki Sasaki. This is kind of the big news out of Dodgers camp. He is set to face hitters on Tuesday. However, it won't be in a Cactus League game. It will be in a minor league scrimmage against the White Sox, which, do we know, is the minor league scrimmage against the White Sox? Does it feature their major league team or does it feature their minor league team? Were we allowed to say that?
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit of both. You and Mike will be there, so you'll be able to give us the answer to that. We'll have the video up on our channel and everybody can figure it out for themselves.
I immediately texted Matt and was like, hey, Matt, this is happening. Am I going to be able to see this, or are they going to hide this on a backfield? By all reports, it's going to be on a field that the media has access to. And so I can't wait for this. Sasaki pitching and Ohtani hitting were the 2 things I am most excited to see in person this week. I don't know if I'm going to see Ohtani hitting. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. But Sasaki, even if it's minor leaguers, even if it's on a backfield, this is going to be fun to see this guy in the box against dudes who have never seen him before.
Yeah, and it'll be, obviously he faced some of his own teammates while I was there last week, and we do have that video up on our YouTube channel if you missed it. This will be good to see him kind of in more of a real game setting, if you will. The reason I think there are multiple reasons he's pitching in this B game on the backfield. One is his start date. Like I mentioned earlier, the Dodgers have a condensed spring training schedule, so they're trying to figure out different ways to get these pitchers enough innings. Sasaki is still, to the best of our public knowledge, on track to start the second game of the Tokyo series. So you do need to kind of start his clock. but also Blake Snell. We're going to get to Blake Snell. Like his scheduled day lines up with Blake Snell, and they're not going to have one of them pitch out of the bullpen. Yeah, Tim G, we're kind of explaining sort of how this works. It'll be in a minor league game. And so there's that aspect. There's also the factor of these B games, these minor league games that take place, not just at Camelback Ranch, but other spring training facilities as well. There's more control in them. If one inning starts to really get away and his pitch count gets too high, they shut it down, they end the inning, and they move on. You can't do that in Cactus League. You can't. The Dodgers did roll over an inning today, but I think it had more to do with the Padres pitcher. I forget his name, but he unfortunately was hit in the face by a line drive. And I haven't seen any updates. We obviously hope he's doing well. That happened with 2 outs in the bottom of the 8th, and the Dodgers just said, "Hey, let's just go to the 9th" after he was carted off. But in these minor league games, it's much easier to do that, to even also create scenarios of, hey, we want to put a guy on second base with 1 out and let him pitch to a couple hitters. And so there are a lot of, I think, benefits to that. I think there's also the side of, as you mentioned with Yamamoto, like Yamamoto didn't really have this luxury. I'd have to go back and double check, but kind of easing Sasaki into things. He is still acclimating to every aspect of being a major league player. And so, let him face an opponent, if you will. TBD if it's major league or minor league players, as you sort of alluded to. And then after that, hopefully he can get into a Cactus League game and then start kind of more of the normal progression toward being ready for opening day or second game of the series, excuse me.
Yeah, because you mentioned the expectation right now is that he's set to start game 2 of the regular season in Tokyo. It's going to be Yamamoto versus Imanaga in game 1. The expectations are that it will be Roki Sasaki probably versus Justin Steele in game 2. And so, yes, this is going to be minor league, B-side, backfields, etc. But if he's going to be starting game 2 in Japan, at some point he's going to be on the big league field, the Cactus League, on the main stage, so to speak. And so this is just sort of a baby step to getting there, and it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is with this, we also need to, the same thing you said about Ha-seong Kim with they also need to apply to Roki Sasaki. Clearly his ceiling is much higher than, we know the potential with Sasaki. It's been well documented. Fact of the matter is he's still just 23 years old. This is still his rookie season. He is coming from a new country. He is learning a laundry list of new things with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Dave Roberts has started saying it. It's not, you can't necessarily expect rookie of the year type thing. Now, does he have the talent to do that? Certainly. But let's remember Yoshinobu Yamamoto's first start, his MLB debut against the Padres. It was 1 inning. It was terrible.
Yeah.
He went on to play a significant role for the team, and he came over as a much more polished, experienced pitcher than what Roki Sasaki is at this point in his career.
It's a great point. Good stuff there. Let's talk on the same note. Let's talk Shohei Ohtani, because we're sort of asking the same questions with Ohtani, which are, when is this guy going to be in a Cactus League game? As a hitter first, obviously he's not going to be pitching in any Cactus League games, given that he's a couple months away from that side of things. But Ohtani did everything this weekend. He threw 95-mile-an-hour fastballs, mixed in some cutters on Saturday, threw out of the windup, which he basically never did as a member of the Angels. And then on Sunday, he saw 32 pitches as a hitter. So we got the full Shohei Ohtani experience over the weekend. And again, selfishly crossing my fingers, maybe Shohei Ohtani in a Cactus League game at some point this week.
Yeah, I'll call my shot a little bit and say the Dodgers should just do it on Friday. I believe they're playing the Angels that day. Yep, it's a home game. Dave has been saying that late this upcoming week now has sort of been the target. So why not just let it be kind of twist the knife a little bit to that team from Anaheim, although coming from Tempe Diablo Stadium in this case. But yeah, if not Friday, then maybe Thursday. Although Thursday is a road game out at Salt River Fields, I believe. It's the Rockies. I know the Rockies and Diamondbacks share it. I think the Rockies are who the Dodgers scheduled against. But yeah, I think we're getting there, and it'll be hopefully for your guys' sake, you and Blake, it does happen while you're in attendance. Hopefully Ohtani hits a home run or 3 and then gives a great post-game interview that we then get to post, and everybody can enjoy that. Yeah.
And again, it's just, these are the types of things at the top of the show when I was saying what a whirlwind it must be to just be at Dodgers camp, because it's like, what's the biggest story? Is it Ohtani pitching? Is it Ohtani hitting? Is it Roki Sasaki? Is it Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow about to make their... there's so many things going on. And so again, Ohtani faces live pitching. It was the first time he's faced live pitching since surgery. I think it was Fabian again, who just kind of highlighted the guy who was throwing it. It was like, oh yeah, this is an international free agent who has like 40 career professional innings under his belt. And Ohtani roped a double, jam shot single if he were running the bases. So good news there on the Ohtani front. Again, both on the hitting side and the pitching side, that he was started mixing in some breaking stuff. Stockton Slap has one of the funnier questions, I guess, that we've ever had as a super chat. He said, has a catcher ever had really bad gas and upset the umpire? Have you ever seen or heard of something like that happening? Serious question. He says the serious question, Matt. I can't say I have.
I feel like that I have heard this at least like kicked around in the locker in the clubhouse. Like, hey, have you ever, like, has that ever happened to you? And maybe like the catcher being asked didn't say yes, but knew of an incident where it may have. Stockton Slap. The good news is Jeff will be in the clubhouse in a couple days. So maybe with enough super chats, we'll get him to ask his buddy Will Smith if that's ever happened to him.
Yeah, and then have my credential revoked to like the next day. We'll just wait till my last day there and see if I can get Austin Barnes to tell us the story. Tim G says, I think I already know the answer, but given the caution with Roki, even with the Cactus League, he won't be starting in Japan versus the Cubs. Right. Actually, Tim, again, Dave Roberts hasn't like necessarily as confidently said it as he has with Yamamoto, but he's gotten like 90% there. Roki will pitch in Japan. I think the highly likely, barring something crazy happening, expectation is that Sasaki would start game 2, right?
Yes. And I don't think I think some of the beginning to Sasaki's spring training game experience being on a backfield is just a byproduct of, like I said, Blake Snell. We're going to get into this. Blake Snell being scheduled to also pitch. And so trying to juggle how all this is going to happen. Look, Clayton Kershaw, when he was, at his peak, if you will, has pitched in a B game before in spring training. It is something that, sort of happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, they're playing the long game, and even pitching in Japan for a guy like Sasaki does not mean 6 innings is what they're going to be expecting out of him. It's highly likely that they're hoping for 2 or 3 innings, even by the time they get there, because it is, a week or 2 before domestic opening day. So keep that in mind as well. Thank you for the super chats. As always, we appreciate those. And thank you to everybody, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, almost 1,800 people in here with us. We appreciate you all. Thanks for making time for us on a Sunday night. This is DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com. Again, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. Let's get to some odds and ends. We've gotten a bunch of different updates on different guys health-wise and whatnot. We talked about Ha-seong Kim a little bit, sort of that he's going to be getting reps in center field as well as second base and shortstop. Let's talk Emmett Sheehan. This was sort of surprisingly good news for me. He was throwing off a mound, video of him throwing off a mound, and the report is that Sheehan could be in rehab games as soon as May. We knew he was kind of the one injured pitcher that was going to come back. River Ryan, Gavin Stone, not expected back at any point this season. But Emmett Sheehan is halfway through the year, roughly. But in rehab games as soon as May is good news for a guy that a couple years ago was, sort of one of the better young pitchers if not the best young pitcher that the Dodgers had brought up that season.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just another reminder, like I said, you're kind of looking at the Dodgers when you're there covering, there's this going on here, there's that going on there. Their starting pitching depth we have discussed is certainly they have it in spades right now, even with some of the guys who are coming back. And so, yeah, it's encouraging to see progress being made by some of these young guys.
It's interesting even as I think this, like injuries happen, yada, yada, yada. But Sheehan's going to have a tough road to get to the major leagues in 2025. Despite how good he was in 2023, we've talked about the roster stuff. Like Gonsolin and May are not going to be optionable. And so how a guy like Sheehan makes it to the major leagues, where Bobby Miller is on the depth chart, Landon Knack, some other guys who might sort of be ahead of him on this imaginary 9, 10, 11, 12 starting pitcher depth chart, whether Emmett Sheehan makes it back up remains to be seen. It's interesting on that front. So something to keep an eye on there with Emmett Sheehan.
Yeah, real quick to your point, even with Sheehan coming up in 2023, that was an accelerated timeline. It was a matter of like he pitched well enough to certainly put himself in the conversation, but if the Dodgers had it their way, that wouldn't have happened at all. Like they would have, he forced, like he was ahead of schedule. And so, yeah, to your point, if he's not necessarily up this year, like it's not an indictment on him, it's just a matter of, the depth that they have.
Yeah, the other news we've got pitching wise is a couple guys you may have heard of, Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow. They're decent, is what I've been told at pitching. Both guys were expected to pitch in exhibition games in Japan against the Yomiuri Giants and the Henshin Tigers, but also expected to debut this week, make Cactus League debuts. So Glasnow will debut on Monday. Blake Snell expected to debut on Tuesday. So Tuesday, how about that? You get Roki Sasaki on the backfields, and then you get Blake Snell on the big stage. Great news to see these two guys both in games this week.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I got to see them throw live BP last week. I told you, Glasnow wasn't overly sharp in his. He owned it.
Or Chris Taylor's just awesome, hitting the home run off him, and he's just back. One or the other.
Yeah, perhaps two things can be true. Snell looked a little bit better in his live BP session. I'm pretty sure I think that might have been his first one. I'm pretty sure he had a second one since then where he did 2 innings. So yeah, it'll be good to see. Glasnow, it's the first sort of real test, if you will, that for his elbow and being healthy. I know he has certainly voiced a lot of confidence in that being the case, and he's made some mechanical adjustments during the offseason with how he's landing and extension and things like that he's hoping to help keep him healthy. So now, we sort of get to see that in action on, against the Reds. It'll be kind of interesting to see too if Gavin Lux is in the Cincinnati lineup, because it'll be his first time playing. I know it's just spring training, but it'll be his first time playing the Dodgers since being traded.
It's going to give me PTSD. The last time I saw Gavin Lux at spring training, we were there the day he blew up his knee 2 years ago. So hopefully I don't want to see that guy at spring training. I just feel like bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, that was rough. Fortunately, you'll be landing after the game ends, so all is good.
It's true. A couple super chats here before we get to some Evan Phillips stuff. Stockton Slap says D-May is such an obvious bullpen arm, not a starter. This is what I've voiced, maybe not in these strong of terms, but I think he makes more sense as a bullpen arm. Keep him healthy for the remainder of the season. Let his stuff play up, given that you have guys like Tony Gonsolin, who I think are maybe more reliable of a starting pitcher, a guy who maybe has a higher likelihood of being able to handle the workload of a starter. That's why, to me, he's an obvious bullpen arm, not just simply because of who he is, but because of the other options and contract situation, etc. But you don't necessarily agree with this, if I remember right. Or was it Anthony that I was disagreeing with this? Maybe it was Anthony who thinks Dustin May could be the starter.
Probably. I mean, look, I think in a perfect world, like Dustin May is a starting pitcher for the Dodgers at some point, but given his unfortunate injury history and kind of just roster construction, I think, and his stuff, he does profile among the candidates who would be moved to the bullpen best in that group.
Yeah. Timmy says, I wish we gave a non-roster invitee to Honeywell. I miss him. Still not signed with anybody, right?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, he's not, which I do think is a little interesting that he hasn't latched on with the Dodgers at this point. I know, they love their minor league signings, and as we always, kind of say tongue in cheek, it doesn't cost them anything to do something like that. So I'm with Timmy. It's a little surprising that Honeywell wasn't brought back on a minor league deal. Maybe he doesn't want that. Maybe he's looking for a major league contract and he thinks it'll come at some point.
Yeah. Again, I've shared bits and pieces, but there's a friend of a friend who is a major league relief pitcher that I would say is in much the same spot as Honeywell. And I think from what I've heard, this upcoming week, sort of maybe the weekend that we're finishing up right now, is sort of a critical stretch for guys like Honeywell. If they were going to get a major league deal, now is when they would get it. So I do think you're going to see another wave of these veteran relievers start to sign minor league deals. I think it was Trevor Gott signed a deal with the Mariners. I think you're just going to see a bunch of these guys sign. So it's not too late. It's not that the Dodgers have moved on, but just something to keep an eye on. I think you're going to see some familiar names sign in places in the next 4 or 5 days. See, Stockton Slaps. I mean, how about this for a super chat, Matt? Chris Taylor will be an all-star Dalton Rushing Rookie of the Year. I would say one of these things is more likely than the other, and neither of them is very likely, though.
Stockton, you're in here all the time with us. We appreciate your support. If you are right on both of these, we will send you some sort of swag bag or a bobblehead or something. So I am on record. If both of these happen, you'll get something shipped to you from us.
Yeah, and I mean, heck, just go bet on it first. Just forget the swag bag. Go get your 1,000,000 to 1 odds on that prediction. Last one here. Let's talk Evan Phillips. He threw off a mound on Friday. I thought it was interesting when he was asked kind of his timeline, And he sort of joked like, well, if opening day was the normal opening day and not a couple weeks early in Japan, it wouldn't be that bad. He said he thinks he could be back within a couple weeks of domestic opening day, which to some people is going to be bad news because that means he's going to miss not only the Japan series, but then 2 weeks after that. But from my perspective, if he's back within the first month of the regular season, Matt, that's fine. That's good enough for me. I don't need anything to be sped up with a guy like Evan Phillips.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of wishful thinking from Evan Phillips. And I get it, a player, a competitor, like you don't want to resign yourself to being out for any sort of significant stretch. Dave Roberts made it seem like it is going to be a while. They are not going to rush him back by any means. And one reason why is this team, and I've said it, like this team is playing for a World Series. Like it doesn't, if Evan Phillips is not available to them in April, in May, even June, but he's around for October, that is what ultimately is going to matter. And I'm trying to pull up Dave's exact quote, so bear with me here. I have it.
When I see real quick, somebody asked what happened to Phillips. He had a partially torn labrum in the postseason last year, and so did not require surgery, but that's what he is coming back from.
Yeah. So Dave Roberts said that he would not expect. Phillips. There are a couple steps that Phillips needs to get to before getting into games. He did say he's in a quote good spot, but he also added we're quote sort of slow playing him intentionally. Okay. And he did also acknowledge that he believes that Evan Phillips is better off, like in terms of his injury recovery wise, better off than Dave would have anticipated. But he added, quote, we feel that given his workload, intensity of it to start a little bit later, there's just not a whole lot of cost to that, end quote. So that, like, I'm with you. Like, I don't think we're seeing Evan Phillips maybe the end of April, but that I think to me would be the earliest.
Yeah, and again, the good news here is Phillips did throw off a mound. I think he was, basically he wasn't throwing as high of intensity as he could. It's not like he was throwing 100%. I think they said he was throwing like 90-mile-an-hour fastballs. But that's a positive step because the second guy here is Michael Kopech, who's in much a similar spot, and yet like he's further behind Evan Phillips. He was supposed to touch a mound, I believe was the words that Dave Roberts used to describe his Sunday experience. I did not hear anything about if he quote unquote touched a mound today, but if Phillips is at least 2 weeks out from domestic opening day, it feels like Kopech is probably a month-ish at least.
Yeah, and I think, I agree with that. And back to Phillips really quick too. His injury was a partial tear in his rotator. Like that's not insignificant. And so I hope that he is able to return and stay healthy, but there's that also kind of question mark. And if you do have kind of limited bullets, as Dave Roberts likes to call them, you might as well save it for later in this. For all I care, Evan Phillips could miss the first half of the season and say, I'm coming back in the second half and I'll be available. And I'll say, great, like that works. And the Dodgers would say the same thing. Fine.
Yep.
Enjoy, take your time rehabbing, enjoy a couple months off, if you will. And then we'll see you in October.
Totally. And it would be easier if these guys had kind of already gotten paid. Phillips hasn't gotten paid. Kopech hasn't gotten paid. But some of the guys who have already cashed those checks and don't necessarily need to develop a reputation for themselves as being durable or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see how those things play out and what the Dodgers end up doing. Because again, we keep mentioning the Gonsolin, the Dustin May, their roster situation, their contract situation, Anthony Bonda, none of these guys can be optioned. And so how the Dodgers handle maybe Evan Phillips and Michael Kopech, obviously those guys will be back, but the Dodgers might have to get creative about, they can't have all these guys back and healthy at the same time. So they may have to get creative a little bit. We got a super chat here from Stockton Slap. He says, I know Jeff avoids this subject. Bauer got a raw deal, never convicted, obviously set up and deserves to be back in Major League Baseball. I think it was Blake and Scott the other night both predicted that he would not be back in Major League Baseball. What's your take on this, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, first I want to, Stockton, like I said, we do appreciate that you're in here all the time with us. It's not Jeff avoiding the subject. We don't get a lot of Trevor Bauer stuff for a reason. That ship has sailed. The Dodgers have moved on for the better. And this notion that Bauer is quote unquote innocent and he belongs in baseball and he can sue and this and that. If Trevor Bauer truly believed that there was even the slightest chance of getting himself back into the baseball, he would have filed a lawsuit at this point a long time ago.
Yeah.
He has not done that for reasons that I think, are pretty clear, because then you get into discovery and a lot of legal jargon that Trevor Bauer then subjects himself to. And again, if he felt like he had a compelling case and this idea that there is truth to, again, I use the term loosely because it's misused with Trevor Bauer being innocent, we would have gone down that path. It did not happen. You think like he was willingly just, going to take the money and go away and not want to get back in baseball again. He's fine being in Mexico. And I think, is he back in Japan now? No. And so that's just where that stuff is. Trevor Bauer is a thing of years ago. We have moved on for the better, both for us as an outlet and the Dodgers as a team.
Yeah, I would just add one thing. Take all the drama away. Do people really think he's a good enough pitcher to be in Major League Baseball still? Like, I mean, go look at how he's pitched in the places he has been. Go look at how old he is, when the last time he was good. You can debate all you want, did he get a raw deal or not? I just would argue, even if you believe fully that he's this great dude that got totally screwed, I think you could still make a really compelling case he's just not good enough to be in the major leagues at this point.
And I'll double down on that, and then we can move on. I felt Trevor Bauer was extremely overrated at the time the Dodgers signed him.
Yeah, there you go. So if you thought that, 5 or 6 years ago, when he signed the highest AAV contract in Major League history, now at the age of 34, he's 2021 was the last time that he pitched. It is 2025. So we're 4 years removed from that. Okay, we got another super chat here, I believe, from Tim. If Will Smith is ailing, put him on the IL at the start of the season and give Rushing or Fiducia a cup of coffee. Would keep him fresher for the postseason as well. Fiducia is a guy that a lot of people have been impressed with. It seems like, again, if you put stock in early performances, I've been high on Hunter Fiducia. I've said I think he starts. It's for like 12 teams in Major League Baseball probably tomorrow. He's on every Major League roster that's not the Dodgers, I think, at this point in his career, given what he's done at the Major League or the minor league level. But how would you handle Will Smith? We know he's battling through some stuff. Would you just put him on the IL knowing you've got some depth behind him?
I mean, I would maybe consider it. I know that we were getting a lot of questions asking us to please discuss Will Smith's injury. So, Tim, thank you for steering us in that direction. The ankle, it's been revealed by Dave Roberts that the ankle issue was something that he dealt with last season as well. And, Dave said Will's not going to use it as an excuse, but in Dave's opinion, he does believe that it was a factor to his struggling. And I know we discussed Will Smith at length, both last season and the offseason, of what kind of went wrong. Was he playing through an injury? And it turns out, lo and behold, like he was. He is supposed to get into Cactus League games soon. So if he's able to do that and doesn't suffer any sort of setbacks or anything, then I don't anticipate putting him on the injured list. But if there is any sort of lingering soreness or discomfort that he experiences upon getting into games, then I would just put him on the IL for a bit. And same thing with Evan Phillips, same thing with a lot of players. Like the Dodgers are playing for October. So whether these guys are available to begin the season means very little. And to your point, I'm happy to relay that. I don't know if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, Dave was praising Hunter Fiducia, and he referred to him as the third catcher in their organization. So if there is anything that happens, it seems like it's him and not Dalton Rushing who would get the call, which I know a couple weeks ago, you and I sort of kicked around the idea of, would it be Rushing? Would it be just Fiducia? So it does appear that it would be Fiducia, but it would be a backup role for the captain, who I don't know if you've looked at his spring training stats recently, but he's swinging a hot bat.
Yeah, he's swinging a hot bat. Tell me about that. You were impressed? Eye test, passing it?
Oh, 100%. Austin Barnes he's primed for a breakout season this year.
Okay, breakout season. He's going to break off the bench, maybe get into a couple of these games. And where are you at on the Dalton Rushing piece? Because again, you and I have talked about this. This has come up a few weeks in a row. Like, would you just insert him into the starting lineup, or would you let Barnes and Fiducia kind of hold things down?
I would let Barnes and Fiducia, because I don't think Dalton Rushing is ready for kind of an everyday role at the major league level. And like I've discussed in the past, like the Dodgers have been very clearly sort of telegraphed how they plan to bring up their catching prospects. Will Smith was up for a little bit even if he wasn't active, he was sitting in on meetings and things like that before he got to his chance to join the roster for his MLB debut. So I think in a perfect world, we'll see some of that with Dalton Rushing. But he still also is young, and credit to him for rising through the farm system as quickly as he has. But there is, some some growth behind the plate in terms of catching that he needs to do and game calling pitches and game planning and things like that. That the Dodgers like they're playing for a World Series. You're not necessarily. This isn't. Who should we already did the White Sox. We always pick on the Pirates. This isn't. I mentioned the Angels,
Giants, Rockies.
Thought about this. This isn't the Colorado Rockies where they can say go make your MLB debut and just start 140 some odd games this year and whatever happens.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get to some questions. Cole's got a great one right off the bat. All caps questions helps us find this. Matt, what's your take on the challenge system so far? 5 overturned calls today seems significant.
I've been impressed. It's worked a lot. It's worked pretty.
Matt's been impressed. The nerds are the get off my lawn guy says he's impressed. I like this.
Yeah, it's worked pretty flawlessly, and it's been quicker than I anticipated. I know, like, we have the presentation up of Morgan Sword from MLB sort of explaining everything, and he said, you have to challenge, you have to signal that you want to challenge quickly, and then we kind of go through this replay. I didn't realize that basically, like, it's done almost like in an instant. I mean, the whole thing is maybe 5 seconds max.
Yeah,
and I think that at least for me, I'll speak for me, like that helps with kind of introducing this type of technology and a rule change. Doesn't feel like it disrupts the game as much. I honestly, I felt like the pitch clock when they first started that in spring training and I was out there covering game, like that felt more jarring. I felt like the game was just so fast. Now a few years later, I'm sitting here asking, I think the Dodgers' first game felt like so long. I was joking that they needed to turn the pitch clock back on.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we had another Stockton Slap was asking about a guy that I've seen a bunch of people asking about, which is David Bodie. He's an interesting non-roster invitee, so not signed to a major league deal. But this is a guy who has had kind of moments at the major league level. He was a 1.7 wins above replacement guy back in 2019 as a 26-year-old, and then sort of fizzled from there. And has been very marginal. But what did you make of him? I see a lot of people asking about him.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly been impressive. I don't know if his opportunity is going to be with the Dodgers. He might be somebody who, like Daniel's old buddy. Was it Brad Miller? I always forget because it mixes me up.
No, was it Miller? That doesn't sound right on the front side. Somebody help us out here. Maybe.
I always get it mixed up with because the basketball, like the old basketball player was named Brad Miller, and so it always makes. I forget if it was Brad Miller as well on the baseball side, but somebody like that who has a strong spring, and then can these non-roster guys, these minor league contracts, they can opt out if they're not seeing an opportunity with the Dodgers, and I think that we might run into that case with Bodie a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. He came from the Cubs, by the way. I see some people asking about that. So there we go. Let's see. Christopher, would you favor an automated balls and strike system is only challenge based, but via watch wrist device would give the ump the correct call for every pitch? So this is basically robot umps, where the umpire at home plate is not actually making any balls and strikes calls. They're just being buzzed in for a strike, and kind of on their wrist, something vibrates. They call strike. I know you don't want that, right?
Probably not. I would prefer to still have the human element of, like, if the catcher, if the batter, if the pitcher, believes that they, I lost my train of thought, have like a hunch on the pitch if they think it was wrong, like, then, let's keep that kind of human element, if you want. Real quick, I did kind of go back to our last point. I did look it up. It was Brad Miller. So
it was Brad Miller. There you go.
Yeah. Not the NBA player, but Brad Miller, the greatest spring training you'll ever see.
Yeah, exactly. Eden says, can we please discuss protecting pitchers' heads? Obviously, we've seen twice now. Guys take line drives off the head. I don't know. I'm shocked this doesn't happen more often. It feels more rare than it should. The problem is I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be wearing a face mask anytime soon. Is it helmets? Like, I just don't know kind of what the solution is, unfortunately.
Well, so MLB, there was the technology where they allowed pitchers to wear like padding, like I think metal, like pads, if you will, in the caps, but it made your hat like look a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And there was somebody, a left-hander on the Padres, I think, I forget his name. I don't want to say it wrong, but he was definitely one of the first guys that I remember wearing it. And he was mocked and ridiculed, and that's an unfortunate
Alex
sidebar.
Torres.
Yes, Alex Torres. It's so if they can streamline, if they can make it so that it looks a little bit more normal to the regular hats and maybe not as obvious, then maybe players will be more open to it. But there is that option for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to a few more of these. TQT, we talked about Ha-seong Kim earlier. Specifically, let's get to this last part. How has he looked at shortstop?
He's been fine. I mean, pretty smooth. Like it looks like he's comfortable there. I haven't seen a whole lot of it, so I will add that caveat. But from what I did see, he looked fine.
Yeah. Christopher says, when will the Champions jerseys come out and how will they be sold? Only in stores or online? Typically it's like the first month, a month into the season, a few weeks into the season.
If I remember correctly, in 2021, they released it the day of the Dodgers home opener.
Okay.
And yeah, Gold Series stuff like the jerseys, the hats, and because that's when the players were first wearing them. And so I think.
Oh, that's right. You said it's the first home series is typically when they wear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming.
Do you have a guy highlighted that you want to get the gold jersey of?
No, I won't buy a jersey. I mean, maybe do a hat or something.
Okay.
Don't think I'll be doing a jersey. If I think there's a missed opportunity to do it. Well, I know there's some parts where you could get a Walker Buehler World Series jersey, but I think that they missed the boat on that. And obviously, I get it. Like he ended up signing with the Red Sox, so maybe it'd be a little strange.
Yeah, I did Mookie last time around. I got the gold Mookie one. Obviously, he made a bunch of incredible plays in 2020. Stockton says pitchers will look like John Alderud. Look, the NBA or the NFL is dealing with the same thing. These guys can wear Guardian caps over the top of their helmets. And I think it was Manhertz for the Cubs for the Colts, who basically said, like, I want to be able to have coherent conversations with my kids. If there's something out there that's going to protect my brain, I'm just going to wear it. The whole looking cool thing is just so beyond me. That's not my world, but if there is a thing out there that is going to protect your head and protect your brain and you're not wearing it because you think people are going to make fun of you, I just personally, Matt, I can't relate to that. So shout out to John Alderud who wore, the helmet at all times. And, I don't know. This was 20 years ago and this guy was killing it.
Yeah. I mean, if a player chooses to do it, then let them.
Okay, we got a few more questions here. Cole said, is there a players weekend this year where they can put any name on their back?
They have not. MLB has not announced anything. I will say, remember players weekend last year, though, it was much more tame. Like it was basically just, there was still the opportunity to design bats and cleats for great causes to highlight things like that. But the nickname aspect, which I thought was a lot of fun, was removed, unfortunately. So, yeah. I mean, TBD if players weekend does return and if MLB does go back to that format.
Larry wants to know, are you concerned with the number of stolen bases against Dodgers pitchers? So far, I haven't seen even a close call yet.
Not really. I mean, the Dodgers, like Will Smith hasn't been playing. Dodgers haven't had, their full kind of stable of normal starting pitchers, regular expected kind of starting pitchers. And it's also spring training. Like they're not necessarily, and it's early spring training as much as they are on a condensed schedule. They're not as focused on kind of holding a guy right now.
All right, let's get to a couple semi-baseball related questions. Hawaiian Kira says, since we don't see a lot of caps on the live show, do you have a favorite one, Matt?
No, I have more I don't really wear hats, and my wife will tell me, like, she'll ask me, like, why are you buying another hat? You don't really wear them. I tell her, like, no, I will wear it, and then I don't really end up wearing it. I'll throw them on really quick if it's like running to the market or a quick errand. But no real favorite hat.
El Shiva, this is a fair question. Said, are the Dodgers invited to the White House, which is a tradition? This isn't a political question. There was news I saw today that the Eagles had declined a invitation to the White House, reportedly. But the Dodgers, after 2020, a group of guys went. Because Joe Kelly was wearing his mariachi gear. That was the famous thing. So I imagine this is something that we might hear about in the next few months.
Yeah, it'll come out later. They'll obviously try to overlap it when the Dodgers are playing the Nationals out there. So just look at the schedule, and that would be when the visit, I assume, will take place. I think if the Dodgers are invited, that they will go.
Yeah, we know of at least a few that'll be very excited to be there. David says, Matt, you enjoyed my prime rib picture yesterday. If you're ever in upstate New York, dinner is on him. So this was like the first David food picture in a while that I feel like you were excited about.
I think so. It's definitely the most complete, where I looked at that plate and I went, yes, 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 I'm eating everything on there. Some of the recent ones it'd be like, well, I'll try that. Maybe I'll have a little bit of that. But yeah, David, that looked great.
Hey, and if anybody wants to buy me and Blake Raising Cane's or something this upcoming week in Phoenix, Arizona, you know where to find us as well. Laura says you need to wear a hat for at least one show, Matt, by the way.
Okay. I'll
Take it under
we can make
consideration.
that happen. I'm trying to see if I put a stipulation on it, like if the Dodgers repeat or something. But I don't want to make you wait that long. I'll wear one of these days.
Anthony and I had a Tuesday show pretty recently where neither of us was wearing a hat. So it was a crazy, crazy world. No hats allowed. Okay, last question here. Cole says, Matt, did you experience any local cuisine in Arizona, or did you eat at Applebee's the entire time? Matt's not the Applebee's guy, so you can cross that one off the list. But I think last time we had you on, you were expecting to eat a lot of home-cooked meals, if I remember right.
Yes. So still primarily ate at home. I did try a sandwich place. I forgot what it was called, but it was a sandwich place out there that my brother-in-law and sister-in-law knew of that was pretty good. I got like a turkey, avocado, bacon kind of club sandwich.
Sounds awesome.
It was pretty good. And then my last day, Saturday, before we drove back, they went and got bagels from this place that makes them the way they do in New York, which I guess is predicated and based a lot on like the water filtration system or something like that. Which
I know there's you can boil bagels versus I guess just baking bagels. So I know there's a difference there, but I don't know about the water filtration setup.
Yeah, I wasn't fully aware of it, but it is like they sent me their website so I could like pick out what bagel I wanted, and so it did have it on there, and it kind of explained it that in New York, like if you go to a bagel shop, it's the water is filtered this way, and they do it the same way in Arizona. So it was good. Yeah, I didn't really get a chance to explore too much. On Friday it was my goddaughter's birthday, so she picked where she wanted to go, and they live out there, so she chose Cheesecake Factory. So we had dinner there that night. Yeah, and real quick, I know we're shutting off the stream here, but she was asking if we cover games or go to games that aren't at Camelback Ranch. Yes, that is the plan. I was at Sloan Park myself when the Dodgers played the Cubs the second game. So yes, when we're there for the week, we request, just wherever the Dodgers are playing, that's where we try to go cover them. So we're certainly not just limiting ourselves to only.
Well, she wants to know if the food's any better at some of these other places.
Yes.
There you go. Nice and short. I was at Tempe Diablo last time. That place stinks, but I've heard it's redone and better, and I'm very grateful that we're not going there this time around. The Angels are coming to us.
Even though it was redone, some sources that used to be close to the team that I spoke to said it was mainly like clubhouse stuff is now like major league level. And so it's not. So if you're press or if your fans kind of going, it's not. I don't think it's necessarily the renovations were not tailored to you this time around.
It's true. As we close, I just want to repeat something that Matt and I said earlier. If you watched the show on Thursday night, you heard our guy Scott Gearman announce that he's going to be leaving the show at the end of this month, sort of making that news public, news that was already known, obviously internally. And I just want to be as clear as possible and say we love Scott. And as I shared, I was excited for him because I know this is something he's excited about, something he's passionate about. And I said, hey, there's not a lot of people in life that make sacrifices in order to go chase the things that they truly want to do. And so kudos to you for being the guy that the people in your life needed and for going and chasing after something that I think is as admirable as being an elementary school teacher, which is what he's hoping to do. And so he will be missed. And yet, like Matt said, it's bittersweet because on one hand, we're worse off for it at DodgerHeads and at Dodger Blue. But at the same time, I'm happy for him, excited for him, proud for him that he's able to get to sort of go ahead and get that. So as he mentioned, he's still going to be online. He's still going to be at social media. You'll probably see him on content shows like ours from time to time, but we just want to wish him well as he goes off and does his own thing. And I know, this is, I can't speak for everybody on our staff, but I know I can speak for everybody that it is a bittersweet thing and that we are worse off with Scott leaving and yet excited that he's going to get to do something that he's passionate about.
Yeah, that's well said. And, I echo all of that. And Scott knows he has a standing invitation an open invitation to join us whenever it works for his schedule. And so hopefully we'll be able to get him on here and he'll be able to have time and without, disrupting the goals that he's pursuing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Thank you, everybody, as always, for being on here. Stay tuned this week. Again, Blake and I are going to be in a house in Phoenix. So, who knows? There might be some nights where we're looking at each other and saying, I got nothing to do. You got nothing to do. Let's hop on and do a live show. So stay tuned for that, as well as we're going to chase down as many interviews from guys in the clubhouse and on the backfields as we possibly can. And so if you're not already, subscribe to Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube. If you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, Google, you can find Dodger Heads there. But we are hoping to come with an avalanche of content this week, bullpens, scrums, as well as, like we said, exclusive interviews as well. So that is Matthew Moreno. I am Jeff Spiegel, folks. Enjoy the rest of your night. As always, go Dodgers. And still champs.